responsible for SteelCentral Portal. As Steve mentioned earlier, it's a product we announced that delivered to the market.
That's Max.
Just recently. What I'm going to talk with you about today is kind of taking the war out of the war room around application and network performance challenges. So I'm with the SteelCentral team, which, as Steve mentioned earlier, is really focused on application and network performance management. One of the things that never shocks me is whenever I go out and talk to customers about their needs and challenges they're trying to focus on, what I often hear from customers is that they have a ton of tools that they're using in their environments to try to identify problems and manage problems and resolve problems. And I've been in this market space, the performance management space, for about 15 years, to date myself a little bit, and it never ceases to amaze me the number of tools that our customers are using. And one of the challenges we're trying to solve really around this area of many point products, many tools that are for them. So you look at the traditional performance management approach, what we're typically seeing is multiple point products, whether it be at the network layer, the web layer, the application, the database. You're looking at it from the user perspective. Most customers I talk with have 30, 40, 50, even up to 70 different tools. And that's a challenge in itself. And when I talk about the portal, what we're doing here, I'll address what we're trying to do there. The other thing we're also seeing, as we talked a little bit earlier, and you'll hear more about from Joshua, is just challenges that are being introduced by new technologies. We talked about private cloud, hybrid cloud, et cetera. And that's also having a big play within application performance management. But I think when we really talk about the problem, there's really three things I'd like to highlight in a couple of analyst quotes here. The first one is that many of the IT organizations, they have these many tools. They're very fragmented still as far as when it comes to identifying problems, resolving problems. It's often resulting in some type of a war room where everyone gets in the room and says, hey, my tool tells me this tool tells me this. We're finding also that 81% of customers are using cross-domain teams to tackle these performance issues, which means that a lot of people in the room when something does occur. And then the third thing is really that a lot of time is being wasted on root cause analysis. So that's kind of the premise for what we're doing within SteelCentral Portal. SteelCentral Portal is a central place, web-based, easy to use, where customers can come in. And I like to think of it as more as personas. There's really two types of personas, actually multiple personas, but two types of personas I like to highlight when I talk about Portal. The first one is your tier 1, tier 0, NOC type operators that are trying to get an idea of what's happening in their environment and maybe doing some level 1 type triage. Then you have a second type of persona, which is literally your tier 2 or tier 3, more of your subject matter experts. They're typically going into deep world as far as forensics and drilling down to get to identify root cause. And then you have these other consumers of information such as this here that might be around line of business owner, CIO, executives that want more, not so much for drilling down and sitting in the NOC, but more of like status type dashboards. When we talk about Portal supports all three of those types of use cases. So I gotta go ahead and talk about Portal itself. There's really three things I'm going to focus on. The first thing is collaboration across teams. As I mentioned, when I sit down with customers, it still amazes me the number of tools they're using for doing performance management. I'm going to talk in a minute about how we help them collaborate across those teams, and I'll actually give you a quick walkthrough as far as what that looks like, how you can pivot whether you're a network expert, a NOC operator, an application expert, a database expert, et cetera, and be able to pivot very quickly an easy-to-use interface to pull this information together to do triage, as well as to drill down deep. I'm also going to talk about how we leverage our Riverbed expertise via Portal, and I'll talk about that. And then the last one I'll talk about is running stakeholders, the meaningful data, the actionable data that we pull up into Portal. So Portal sits on top of the Riverbed products, using our best-in-class solutions around end-user experience, network and infrastructure management, as well as application performance. It's a federated architecture, so Portal sits on the top, and information gets fed into it. So when I think of the NOC operator I talked about earlier, sitting at the top, they don't need to know all the different tools. All they need to know is how to navigate in Portal. and they can pivot from looking at it from an end user actually credit and say, hey, what's the response time for this application? Where's most of the time being spent? And then go further down into where the network, if that's where the performance is degrading, or I can go over into the application. And I'll give you an example of what that looks like in a minute. The good thing about Portal is this is also that's something that they could share to their Tier 2, Tier 3. They've done their triage work. They identify where they think the problem is, and then they want to share maybe to a Tier 2 or Tier 3 type person to do additional work or validate what they found. And that's another scenario where we can basically share a URL from where they're at, and then the Tier 2, Tier 3 person can pick up the workflow from there. We have these concepts of drill down, so I'm in Portal, and tell me more from the information from the data sources connected. And then we have the concept called launching context, which is say, launch me into one of the forensics tools within the Riverbed suite. So in this case here, the workflow, I've done my triage. I think this is where the problem is. I'm going to actually pass it off to Tier 2, Tier 3. And from there, they can actually launch in context into their specialist tool, they get more domain specific, whether it be the network, the application, the systems, etc. So when we talk about collaboration, it's a common UI where all the information comes together, it gets blended together in here. And I'm going to go through an example to get more detail. It blends data across the performance domains. Again, I don't need to know, I don't need to be deep in network or applications, but I have the information at my fingertips to identify a problem before it goes bad, and then as well as identify where the most likely problem is. To be able to improve mean time to repair as well as have to identify issues. Second thing is to leverage Riverbed's expertise. And this is a couple of things here that I'm going to talk about. The first one is we have a lot of experience here at Riverbed around performance management in all these different domains. We have very deep information, deep technical information about what's going on across the domains. The key thing here is that we know our data and we're very experienced within performance. So one of the things that we do provide to customers with Portal is the ability to basically build a model, an application model, based upon the information you have, and then be able to give you the best available data based upon the information we're collecting to get that application. We're also doing things like if the model changes, or if I add a data source to Riverbed or I remove a data source, all this information updates. So these dashboards are very lightweight as far as maintaining them. So you can basically build a model, publish it, and share it out to your various stakeholders. The other thing that we're doing is providing. The third thing I want to talk about is kind of meaningful information to the stakeholders. I talked about personas earlier. We really have three types of workflows. The first one is around service level status. So you think of like NOCs, you think of CIOs, line of business, application owners. They don't need the gory details, but they want to have a good idea of what the status of the application performance is, whether it be from user experience, within the application, or within the systems themselves. Then you typically have your NOC operator that's trying to have a generalist view across everything to identify where problems are. And then you have your subject matter experts who are doing drill downs. The good thing about Portal is we can actually create dashboards that are actually tailored to each of those users, and they can just access them to your web browser. They don't have to know the gory details of product A, product B. It's very easy to just get into your URL, log in, and be able to navigate to the information that we're sharing with them. Let me give a quick walkthrough. One of the really new things about Portal is the ability to create a model. We have the ability to basically look, basically go to the data sources and say, hey, I guess the way in which we do, all you need to know to build a model is something about the application itself, a host name, an IP address. And from there, we can build a model up by basically saying, what do you know about this IP address? In this example you have on the screen in front of you, 3 of our data sources know about this Mortgage M host. It also knows that there's 6 relationships and 6 hosts that I'm communicating with. That's going in one direction. When I'm doing the model build, I can either build upstream or downstream and basically build up the model. It usually takes about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to build a model, refine it a little bit, and then you have this model. And once you publish this model, this is what I was talking about, is the out-of-box dashboards. So I can go up, down, build on the model. I can exclude things. So in this case here, I have a NetSensor, NetScarp that's communicating with this host. It's not part of my application model, so I'm going to exclude those. But when I get to a model that I like, it might look something like this here. One of the things that we found when working with our customers about the models is that the models themselves give a visual representation of what application looks like. So when troubleshooting or identifying problems, it's a lot easier using the map, the application map, to identify where you need to drill down. In the case where we have this model here, you actually see in the red, the yellow, and the greens, that's actually status from the data sources and from the information we're collecting from performance. And that information is being populated either by app response, net profiler, app internal, net sensor, either the host or the relationships themselves. Going forward, if we take and I'm going to give you kind of view if we logged into Portal. As you log into Portal, so I'm the user. What I see when I log into Portal is I have 3 types of dashboards. I have my application dashboards, I have custom dashboards, as well as I have some default dashboards. Default dashboards are dashboards that are used to provide information to typically the folks that are setting up as far as what's available to me. So when you first turn it on, you actually have some information to look at and you start to look at some dashboards. The custom dashboards are used when you want to blend data. So maybe I want to take a metric from my end user experience and my application performance and blend those together to create a custom dashboard. You have the ability to do that. But really what I want to focus on is the application dashboards and this trade fast application. So this is really where the power of Portal comes in. So if I drill down on that and if I click on that application card, it'll bring me to a high-level summary such as this here. This high-level summary will have an end-user experience in the upper left-hand quadrant, then the application map as my reference, my network performance, and my application performance. So it's providing me real key information in one place across really 3 or 4 different IT domains. If I drill down, I also have behind this map within TradeFast. You notice I'm still looking at the TradeFast application. Now I'm looking at the TradeFast end user experience panel. And what I'm seeing here is what's happening from the user perspective. I'm seeing page time, both page families, response codes, etc. If I pivot again, I can pivot over to, say, let's take a look at the infrastructure for TradeFast. So based upon this model, I can move from end user experience into infrastructure, or I can pivot again over into the application itself. So now I'm looking at the Java and the .NET code, and I'm actually seeing what's happening from a performance perspective within the application itself. So the key thing here is whether I'm a network person, a tier 1 operator, tier 1 NOC operator, I can very quickly look at what's happening for TradeFast and pivot from one dimension to another without having to go to multiple tools. Further, as another use case, if I'm on the map itself, I can use that as a way to navigate. I can actually click on a host and tell me, hey, what's happening with that host itself? This might be tiny in the room, so I apologize, but I can look at, in this case here, I see that the CPU is running a little bit hot. I see the processor queue length is starting to extend, and it looks like a disk utilization is starting to get a little heated as well. I can further drill down within here and say, okay, tell me about this relationship in the back end. It looks like I'm having a little bit of trouble back here. Tell me more about what's happening there. And it looks like I'm actually having some response time issues with my performance with my database. From here, I can say, okay, well, tell me what is that doing to the response time overall? And I can actually see over time, I'm seeing that it spikes and drops and spikes and drops and spikes. What's interesting is now I'm going to pivot over to the user experience and say, okay, what's that mean? Is this something I have to walk or run for? In this case, I have to run because it looks like I'm starting to have spikes as well on the user perspective. So I really need to figure out and drill down further to identify what this problem is. I could go, and in this case here, with application time, I can go into the deeper in the TradeFast from an application perspective and look and see what's happening, where the wait states are within the code itself, or even up back to the database. One of the things that we were also introduced with Portal is the ability to do reporting. A good use case came out during our beta cycle where a customer of ours had an application that started to experience a performance problem. This application was actually outsourced, so they didn't touch the code, but they had no way to share Portal with them because there's an external partner there. So what they did is they created a report and sent it over to them saying, here, here's a PDF, here's what we're seeing and when the problem manifested itself, can you help us out? And lo and behold, what it came out to be is there was a code change that they did the previous night that they backed out, fixed it, and then put it back into play and resolved the performance issue they're experiencing. So the ability to collaborate also outside of Portal is another use case that we've enabled with SteelCentral Portal. There's a series of dashboard templates that you can also use for creating custom dashboards. There's also, you can start with blank, but the key thing here is that you have a good start out of box to create dashboards. You can create application models and get those out of the box, or you can do things where you mix and match. So that's what I had to share with you. Are there questions around Portal that I can answer for you?
Did Portal come from the OpNet acquisition? Is that where part of that came from?
So Portal is a new product. You might be familiar with a product called RPM Dashboards, which is a prior product. There's a freemium product that OpNet had. There's some likeness to the RPM Dashboard, but Portal is a new product that we introduced in April.